The underdog sports movie is such a well-trodden subgenre that film fans rarely expect much new or particularly interesting from it. But Bennett Miller's 2011 film Moneyball is a rare one that stands out from the pack. Based on Michael Lewis's 2003 book of the same name, the movie follows the Oakland Athletics' near-mythic 2002 baseball season, as their general manager Billy Beane attempted to use data and statistics to assemble a team of undervalued sportsmen. Almost a decade later, Moneyball continues to persist as an uncommonly thought about film about the marriage between sports and big business. However, the final flick was almost so very different, and it's clear that Moneyball's success was a fortuitous collision of talent, luck, and good timing. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 20 things you didn't know about Moneyball. Number 20. Chris Pratt was initially rejected for being too fat. Chris Pratt plays Oakland Athletics first baseman / catcher Scott Hatteberg in the movie, though he very nearly missed out on the role due to his, at the time, bigger frame. Pratt was initially told that he was too large for the role, having gained 40 pounds before putting the feelers out, apparently as a result of his then girlfriend Anna Faris's cooking. But Pratt was determined to win the role, and so decided to lose the weight, working out continually during Moneyball's casting process and routinely checking in with producers to see if the part had been cast. Pratt eventually lost 30 pounds, after which he sent a photo of himself to the casting director and was finally cast in the role. Number 19. Steven Soderbergh originally planned to direct, with baseball players playing themselves. Though Moneyball was eventually helmed by Bennett Miller, he actually ended up replacing Steven Soderbergh, who had gotten as far as shooting interviews with real baseball players to be included in the movie. Soderbergh's vision for Moneyball was quite experimental, deciding to have the film's baseball players play themselves while also rewriting major aspects of Steven Zalian's script to be more strictly factual. But after reviewing Soderbergh's rewrites, Sony put production on hold just 5 days before principal photography was set to begin, fearing that his left-field approach was too much of a commercial gamble in the fraught economic climate. Production ultimately resumed a year later, with Miller replacing Soderbergh, opting for a more conventional docudrama approach as rewritten by Aaron Sorkin. Number 18. Aaron Sorkin agreed to rewrite the script on one condition. Legendary screenwriter Aaron Sorkin was brought on board to rewrite Moneyball's script, as just mentioned, though Sorkin, who was months away from winning a Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar for his work on The Social Network, only agreed to update the existing script on one condition. Sorkin insisted that Steven Zalian, who wrote the previous draft, would still receive a screenwriting credit for his work on the flick, because Sorkin loved his attempt and didn't feel that he could do much to improve it. As a result, when the film received a Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar nomination, both Sorkin and Zalian, along with the original screenwriter Stan Chervin, were all nominated for their work on the script, though ultimately lost to The Descendants. Number 17. Most of the scouts were played by real MLB scouts. Though Bennett Miller hired actual actors to play most of the major roles, he did decide to cast real-life Major League Baseball scouts as the majority of the scouts seen in the movie. Miller said that during pre-production he invited a number of scouts to a meeting to get a sense for how they conducted their business. And while watching them interact, it soon became clear to him and Brad Pitt that they didn't really need to hire actors. As a result, the real scouts were hired for shooting proper, with Miller simply asking them to study the Oakland Athletics' 2002 season and apply their own problem-solving skills to the situation. In Miller's own words, this authentically really helped, quote, bring the film to life. Number 16. Comedian Demetri Martin was originally hired to play Peter Brant. The role of the A's assistant GM Peter Brant was ultimately played by Jonah Hill, who received a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination for his efforts, though way back when Moneyball was still being helmed by Steven Soderbergh, the casting was totally different. Soderbergh had already cast comedian Demetri Martin as Brant before being dismissed from the project, at which point Martin was also let go. In his own words, quote, I was going to be in a movie directed by Steven Soderbergh, who I have great respect for, and Brad Pitt. I got my hair cut next to Brad in the trailer, we were going over our characters, talking about how this was going to work, and that was a Thursday. Friday, I get the call before we get to the set, new script, new director a year later, and of course, I wasn't in the movie. Number 15. The production was allowed access to Fenway Park for a single day. For the sequence in the film where Billy visits the Boston Red Sox's home stadium of Fenway Park, the production was given permission to shoot at the real stadium, albeit only for a single day. And so when the weather took a change for the worse on the allotted shooting day, Miller had no choice but to roll with it and shoot the scene with an incredibly overcast backdrop. It was a bit of a happy accident in the end though, as it rather added to the scene's wistful ambience. Number 14, Activision CEO Bobby Kotick has a cameo. Now for a gaming channel crossover that I did not expect to see happen when I started this list. Of the many cameos throughout the film, surely none is weirder than that of Activision CEO Bobby Kotick, who briefly appears as the Athletics' owner Stephen Schott. Though the cameo flew under the radar for most audiences, video game fans were nevertheless baffled at Kotick showing up in a sports movie, at least until they learned that the CEO was friends with director Miller. According to Kotick, the two were having dinner when Miller asked him to review the script from an executive's mindset. And after Kotick expressed that Schott's dialogue didn't sound authentic, Miller offered for him to rewrite and perform the part himself. Kotick obviously agreed, but only on the condition that Miller directed a short film for the Call of Duty endowment in return. Kotick's performance, totally believable though it was, ultimately went uncredited, and the executive has since insisted that we'll never see him acting again. Number 13, Art Howe was furious at his depiction in the film. Moneyball depicts the Athletics manager Art Howe, as played by the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, as a major opponent to Billy's unconventional approach to assembling his team, a characterization which reportedly left the real-life Howe furious. Though the film shows Howe refusing to accept Bean's instructions, in reality he was far less of a roadblock, with Scott Hattenberg himself even stating that Howe's depiction in the film was inaccurate. Obviously, dramatic license is nothing new to biographical cinema, though at the same time you can't really blame Howe for being angry at his presence in the film, given its implied air of factual authenticity. Number 12, filmmaker Spike Jonze cameos as the new husband of Billy's ex-wife. Filmmaker Spike Jonze has a habit of randomly showing up in the most unexpected of movies, having made cameos in David Fincher's The Game, David O. Russell's Three Kings, and most recently, Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street. Jonze also made a totally left-field cameo in Moneyball, showing up for a brief scene as the sleazy new husband of Billy's ex-wife Sharon. To his credit, Jonze knocked his small role out the park, pun very much intended by the way, even if for anyone who knows what the writer-director looks like, it was impossible to not be distracted by his presence. Number 11, Dodger Stadium doubled as 8 baseball stadiums throughout the movie. Though the production was able to secure the use of Fenway Park for a single day, there wasn't enough money in the movie's budget to actually travel across the United States and shoot scenes in all of the stadiums visited by the Athletics. Instead, some production design magic was employed to transform Dodger Stadium into 8 different ballparks throughout the movie, dressing the stadium to resemble the intended counterparts as closely as possible. Watching the movie itself, you'd likely never know that a major corner was being cut at all. Number 10, Brad Pitt included a nod to his future movie project, By the Sea. During the mid-film scene where Billy is talking to his ex-wife and her new husband, keep your eye on the coffee table where you'll see a book called By the Sea. By the Sea isn't in fact a real book, but the title of a script written by Pitt's then partner Angelina Jolie, which would eventually be made into a film starring both Jolie and Pitt several years after Moneyball's release. Don't feel bad if you don't remember the movie hitting screens though, as it was largely panned by critics and bombed catastrophically at the box office. Number 9, the song sung by Billy's daughter wasn't released until 6 years after the movie was set. Billy's daughter Casey is played by Keris Dorsey, and during her audition she sang the song The Show by Lenka, which impressed Miller enough that he not only cast Dorsey in the movie, but even let her perform the song twice in the film. This is especially significant considering the fact that the song itself wasn't released until 2008, some 6 years after the movie itself is set, but Miller felt that the emotion of the song made the factual sacrifice more than worth it. Before Miller decided to use The Show in the film's final scene, Aaron Sorkin's script suggested that Against the Wind be used instead. A bold change and one that ultimately totally worked. Number 8, original cinematographer Adam Kimmel was replaced during pre-production. Miller was originally planning to reteam with his Capote cinematographer Adam Kimmel for this movie, though he eventually had to be replaced by Christopher Nolan's regular DP Wally Pfister after Kimmel was charged with sexual assault and weapons and explosives possession during pre-production. There's curiously little information available online about the outcome of Kimmel's case, though given that Kimmel is reportedly set to reunite with Miller on his next project, it apparently didn't sour their working relationship. Number 7. Several of the actors were former baseball players. Though Miller didn't have baseball players playing themselves as per Steven Soderbergh's original plan, he did hire a number of former baseball players turned actors for bit parts in the film. The A's submarine relief pitcher Chad Bradford, for example, is played by Casey Bond, a former outfielder for the San Francisco Giants. Outfielder David Justins was meanwhile played by former baseball player Stephen Bishop, who had actually spent a season playing with Justice himself in the 1990s. And pitcher Mike Magnante was played by former Atlanta Braves pitcher Darren Ebert. As a result, the physicality of the movie's game footage seemed totally authentic, while not having to resort to gimmickry of having non-actor athletes desperately trying to act. Number 6. Billy quotes Napoleon during a speech to his team. When Billy is giving his players a pep talk, he says, quote, "When your enemy's making mistakes, don't interrupt them. They're giving you an out, just giving it to you. Take it." This line is paraphrasing a quote generally attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte, who reportedly said this very same thing to his generals during an 1805 battle. Number 5. Katherine Martha's scenes as Billy's wife were cut from the movie. Though the final cut of Moneyball depicts only Billy's ex-wife, in reality he had remarried by that point, and scenes featuring his second wife were actually filmed, with Cold Case star Catherine Morris playing the part. Though these scenes didn't make the cut, they do explain why Bean still wears a wedding ring throughout the movie. Number 4. Paul DePodesta asked Bennett Miller to remove his name from the film. The character of Peter Brant isn't actually a real person, but rather a composite based primarily on the A's former assistant to the general manager, Paul DePodesta. After it became clear that the movie's depiction of him was hewing closer to fiction than reality though, DePodesta asked Miller to change the character's name, and though Miller had no legal obligation to do so, he agreed due to DePodesta's generosity as a consultant during filming. And so, Peter Brant was born. Number 3. Billy sipping at the end of the film actually has a secret significance. The movie climaxes with the A's losing to the Minnesota Twins, after which Billy is called at home by the owner of the Boston Red Sox. Moments before the phone rings, however, pay attention to the glass Billy is drinking from. He doesn't finish the liquid, leaving behind just a sip. This wasn't just a weird coincidence though. Miller intentionally captured the action as a metaphor for how Billy was just a sip away from actually winning. Number 2. Veteran character actor Ron Canada has an uncredited voice cameo. The greatest unsung cameo in Moneyball surely has to belong to legendary character actor Ron Canada, who makes an uncredited voice cameo in the film as a disembodied announcer's voice who sharply criticizes Bean's groundbreaking approach to team selection. Originally, Canada auditioned as a sound-alike for iconic Hall of Famer and commentator Joe Morgan, who strongly opposed Bean's methods, and the actor ended up working with Miller over 3 recording sessions to produce authentic-sounding commentary that was skeptical of Bean's approach. Canada's put-downs were only featured briefly in the final movie, primarily following the A's climactic defeat, though potently confirmed the sentiment of many old guard members of the sport. Number 1. The Oakland Athletics repeated their success the year after the movie came out. Quite poetically, the year after Moneyball was released, the A's repeated their success by winning the AL West, once again under Billy Beane. Despite the Texas Rangers being the odds-on favorites to emerge victorious, the A's pulled ahead by winning the last game of the season, beating the Rangers by just a single victory. And as if to yet again prove the point of the movie, Beane pulled this momentous feat off with what was at the time the second lowest payroll in baseball, at just $59.5 million. Aptly, both fans and the press alike dubbed the season Moneyball 2. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Have you revisited Moneyball anytime soon? And has this list given you a reason to go back and appreciate it even more? And while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.